the soldiers in the trenches, they keep around a lot of stray dogs that they feed, because the dogs function as a kind of like primitive early warning sign, because they can hear mortar rounds a long time before human ears can hear it, and they respond to that. So watching the dogs, you can actually, find out if anything bad is coming.
Еще.
Олег, уйдите!
Есть.
Before this film, I made 2 films with kids also. And both of these films I realized was about kids, who had very safe lives. And the films was about that life getting temporarily knocked out of balance and then finding that balance again. And when I was done with the 2 films, it occurred to me that there's so many children all over the world that lives in the exact opposite positions, where their life is very uncertain. And I was interested to find out, where does a child in such a world go to find some kind of stability and that warmth that you need to survive? So that brought me to Ukraine. In the beginning, from the very first time that I met Oleg, he was very, curious towards me, because I came from a different world out and into his world. So for him, it was the curiosity. There was no problem, getting to know him. But Alexandra was a little bit more reserved, and we later found out why, because there was a rumor going around the village that there were people posing as NGOs, but they weren't actually NGOs. They was only there to harvest the organs from kids. So everybody was terrified of strangers, and it took a little bit of time for us to gain her trust. And I don't think it wasn't until somebody, sent her a photo of us, eating in the local school cafeteria, kind of like the slob food that they get there, that she kind of thought, okay, these people, they can't be organ harvesters. And that's when she invited us to me and the fixer to begin to eat at her place. And once you start, eating food with people, that's when, the ice can start to melt and you can start to really get to know each other. And with the filming, I spend a lot of time just doing what the kids do along with them. So if they go shooting slingshots, I shoot slingshots with them. And if they bathe in the river, I take a dip too, because I think it's funny and I enjoy it, and it resembles my childhood a little bit. And then at some point I would say to them, for the next hour, I'm not here. And in the beginning, they would tease me, look directly into the camera just to see if they could get a response. But I found out that if I didn't, if I just ignored it, then 5 minutes and I'm the boring adult, and then they kind of do their thing and they forget about me completely. We rented a small cinema in a town close to them, and then we brought them in so that they could see the film. And Alexandra, the kids sat on the first row, and Alexandra wanted me to sit next to her so that she could punch me if she didn't like what she was seeing. And in the beginning, I actually thought that she might punch me a little bit, but I think she needed, the first 20 minutes to try and understand what is this thing, with us, because this as a documentary doesn't resemble anything that they've seen on TV that's, called documentary. So she needed, I think, time to really digest, the visual aspect of it also. But then, she got wrapped up in the action, obviously, and she was crying and laughing with the kids, and in the end, I got a really big hug, and she was really happy. And they're all really happy about the film.
For me, this is not so much a film about the conflict as it is a film about where a child goes to find stability and comfort when the whole world is, on fire. And then also develop into a story about mutual dependencies and which people we lean on to get the strength we need to carry on. Because as Oleg leans to Alexandra, she also gets a lot of her strength from him. And that's what I find so beautiful and also tragic in their relationship, because it's so fragile. And I thought that was a very beautiful story. I do my own filming and I do my own sound. And so I went down to the southern parts of the front line of Ukraine with my fixer. And we went into a lot of schools where we interviewed a lot of kids, asked them a couple of questions. Kids that we knew were from villages that was either shelled or close to shelling. And to get a sense of them, I would always ask them, the last question is the most important one, which is kind of like, can you describe to me how it feels like when you're afraid? And not a lot of the kids could really do that until I met Oleg. And he kind of he looked at me for maybe half a second, he hesitated and he said, okay, if you imagine when they start shooting, it's like there's this invisible hand that reaches into my chest and grabs my heart. And it starts squeezing when the bombs, fall down. It squeezes a little bit more until it feels like my heart is just, small and cold. That's roughly how I feel when I'm afraid. And he was 9 at that time. And I have it on tape, and it's kind of like a very magical moment, but unfortunately it didn't fit in the film.
While I was filming the boys getting their haircut, I could really relate to that exact time, or that that thing about the silent saying goodbye. There was almost like it was a very touching moment, I think, for me personally. It was almost like there was this conversation going on between them without any words, and that moment became something other than just making films for me. That moment is why I do what I do, I think.